15 Most Dangerous Serial Killers Still at Large. Number 15. Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer, also known by the pseudonym the Zodiac, is an unidentified serial killer who murdered at least 5 people in the San Francisco Bay Area between December 1968 and October 1969. The Zodiac attacked 3 couples and a cab driver in Benicia, Vallejo, unincorporated Napa County, and the city of San Francisco. 2 of the Zodiac's 7 victims survived. In a series of letters mailed to Bay Area newspapers, the Zodiac took credit for the murders, described details known only to police, threatened bombings and more murders if the newspapers did not print his letters, and included cryptograms with his correspondence. 2 of the Zodiac's 4 cryptograms were decrypted in 1969 and 2020, and the other 2 remain unsolved. Number 14. Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper was an unidentified serial killer active in and around the impoverished Whitechapel district of the East End of London, in 1888. In both criminal case files and the contemporaneous journalistic accounts, the killer was also called the Whitechapel Murderer and Leather Apron. Attacks ascribed to Jack the Ripper typically involved women working as prostitutes who lived in the slums of the East End of London. Their throats were cut prior to abdominal mutilations. The removal of internal organs from at least 3 of the victims led to speculation that the killer had some anatomical or surgical knowledge. Number 13. Monster of Florence. The Monster of Florence, Italian, Il Mostro di Firenze, is the name coined by the Italian press for a serial killer active within the former province of Florence, now the metropolitan city of Florence, between 1968 and 1985. The monster murdered 16 victims, usually young couples secluded in search of privacy, in wooded areas during new moons. Although none of the murders were committed in the city of Florence proper, the name of the killer, initially referred to as the Maniac of Couples, Italian, Il Maniaco del Capiette, was chosen due to the murders being committed in the surrounding countryside. After an investigation was launched in the early 1990s by the Florence prosecutor's office, several connected persons were convicted for involvement in the murders, yet the exact sequence of events, the identity of the main perpetrator and the motive remain unclear. Multiple weapons were used in the murders, including a .22 caliber handgun and a knife, and in half of the cases a large portion of the skin surrounding sexual organs was excised from the bodies of the female victims. Number 12. Long Island Serial Killer. The Gilgo Beach serial killings were a series of murders on Long Island, New York, between 1993 and 2010. The case gained national attention in late 2010 and 2011, when police searching for a missing woman, Shannon Gilbert, discovered the remains of 10 victims along Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach and in nearby areas of Suffolk and Nassau counties. 4 of these victims, Melissa Barthelemy, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Megan Waterman, and Amber Lynn Costello, were found in December 2010 in close proximity and became known as the Gilgo 4. 6 additional sets of remains were located in March and April 2011, several of which were later connected to earlier unsolved cases. Gilbert's disappearance in May 2010 prompted the initial search, though her cause of death remains disputed and is not conclusively linked to the other victims. Number 11. Cleveland Torso Murderer. The Cleveland Torso Murderer, also known as the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run, was an unidentified serial killer who operated in Cleveland, Ohio, United States, during the 1930s. The killings were characterized by the dismemberment of 13 known victims and the disposal of their remains in the impoverished neighborhood of Kingsbury Run. Most victims came from an area east of Kingsbury Run called the Roaring Third or Hobo Jungle, known for its bars, gambling dens, brothels, and vagrants. Despite an investigation of the murders, which at one time was led by famed lawman Elliot Ness, the murderer was never apprehended. In 2024, the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office teamed up with the DNA Doe Project to exhume some of the unidentified victims and use investigative genetic genealogy to determine their identities. Number 10. Alphabet Murders. The alphabet murders, also known as the double initial murders, are an unsolved series of child murders which occurred between 1971 and 1973 in Rochester, New York. All three victims were girls aged 10 or 11 whose surname began with the same letter as that of her first name. Each victim had been sexually assaulted and murdered by either manual or ligature strangulation before her body was discarded in or near a town or village near Rochester with a name beginning with the same letter as the victim's name. Number 9. Texarkana Moonlight Murders. The Texarkana Moonlight Murders, a term coined by the contemporary press, was a series of 4 unsolved serial murders and related violent crimes committed in the Texarkana region of the United States in early 1946. They were attributed to an alleged unidentified perpetrator known as the Phantom of Texarkana, the Phantom Killer, or the Phantom Slayer. This hypothetical suspect is credited with attacking 8 people, 5 of them fatally, in a 10-week period. The attacks occurred at night on weekends between February 22 and May 3, targeting couples. The first 3 attacks occurred at lovers' lanes or quiet stretches of road in Texas. The 4th attack occurred at an isolated farmhouse in Arkansas. Number 8. Servant Girl Annihilator. The Servant Girl Annihilator, also known as the Midnight Assassin, was an unidentified American serial killer who preyed upon the city of Austin, Texas, in 1884 and 1885. The moniker Servant Girl Annihilator originated with the writer O. Henry. The series of 8 axe murders were referred to by contemporary sources as the Servant Girl Murders. The December 26, 1885, issue of the New York Times reported that the murders were committed by some cunning madman, who was insane on the subject of killing women. The murders represent an early documented example of a serial killer operating in the United States, 3 years before the Jack the Ripper murders in Whitechapel. Number 7. Axeman of New Orleans. The Axeman of New Orleans was an unidentified American serial killer who was active in and around New Orleans, Louisiana between May 1918 and October 1919. Press reports during the height of public panic over the killings mentioned similar crimes as early as 1911, but recent researchers have called these reports into question. The attacker was never identified, and the murders remain unsolved. Number 6. Babysitter Killer. The Babysitter, Killer Queen is a 2020 American black comedy slasher film directed and produced by Mick G., from a screenplay he wrote with Dan Lagana, Brad Morris, and Jimmy Warden. It is a sequel to the 2017 film The Babysitter and stars Judah Lewis, Emily Allen Lind, Jenna Ortega, Robbie Amell, Andrew Batchelor, Leslie Bibb, Hannah Mae Lee, Bella Thorne, Samara Weaving, and Ken Marino. The film continues the story of Cole Johnson, 2 years after the events of the first film, who must again fight to ensure his survival after a secret is unburied, as he is hunted by demonic enemies, both old and new. The film was released on September 10, 2020, on Netflix, receiving generally negative reviews from critics. As of November 2023, a sequel was still in development. Number 5. Connecticut River Valley Killer. The Connecticut River Valley Killer, also known as the Valley Killer, is the moniker for an unidentified American serial killer believed to be responsible for at least 7 murders of women in the Connecticut River Valley region of New England between 1978 and 1988. In 1985 and 1986, the skeletal remains of 2 victims were recovered within 1,000 feet, 300 meters, of each other in a wooded area in Kellyville, New Hampshire. Forensic examination indicated multiple stab wounds. Between the recovery of the first and second bodies, a 36-year-old woman was fatally stabbed in a frenzied attack inside her home in Saxtons River, Vermont. 10 days later, the remains of a third missing woman were found, also bearing evidence of stab wounds. At this point, investigators began examining prior homicides in the area and found 2 previous cases, in 1978 and 1981, further reinforcing the presence of a serial killer. Number 4. Daytona Beach Killer. Robert Tyrone Hayes, born March 12, 1982, is an American serial killer who was convicted of 3 murders in the Daytona Beach, Florida, area between December 2005 and February 2006. DNA tests have also linked him to a 4th murder committed in March 2016. In addition, he remains the prime suspect in the murder of another woman in December 2007. The first 3 murders that were committed in Daytona Beach, Florida, garnered high media attention, and before Hayes' identification, the perpetrator was nicknamed the Daytona Beach Killer. Investigators were not able to close in on a suspect in time. Number 3. Edgecombe County Serial Killer. The Edgecombe County serial killer is an unidentified serial killer in the surroundings of Edgecombe and Halifax counties in North Carolina, United States. There are 10 suspected victims, all African American women, and the remains of 8 have been recovered. Because some of the victims had been found near the 7 Bridges Road in Rocky Mount, the culprit has also been called the 7 Bridges Killer. All the victims were black, engaged in prostitution, and had problems with drug addiction at various times. Number 2. Frankford Slasher. The Frankford Slasher is the name given by the media to a possible serial killer who operated in and around the neighborhood of Frankford in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania from 1985 to 1990. Leonard Christopher was convicted in the murder of one of the 9 supposedly linked victims, but the others remain unsolved. All of the victims were sexually assaulted and stabbed to death. Several of the victims